I mean, all of this can be tied back to U.S. and Western imperialism and money-eyed interests. But I want to talk about Evo Morales because Evo Morales has now been accused of high crimes by this usurpatory government that's taken place, and everybody's wondering, will he be able to return to Bolivia? Because it seems like if he does, he'll suffer the same fate as a lot of his cabinet members and his supporters have, where they've been jailed, literally physically attacked, their houses have been burned down. What do you think is next for Evo Morales?
Well, Bolivia is a very interesting situation, and when I heard that I saw the initial signs of attempts at a color revolution before the vote. They attacked the political mass party's headquarters, set it on fire, and so you already started to see these kind of pressures developing in Bolivia before the election. They were already calling the election corrupt before the vote happened. So they were really prepared. Now, I first thought there's no way that Evo Morales would be knocked out because he was politically popular.
So
Right.
strong.
So strong.
Ah.
I didn't realize how much his military had been contaminated by the United States, and that's now become evident. $1 million payoffs for generals, $100,000 payoffs for lower officials. The general who told Evo to resign has now moved to the United States. I mean, it's amazing, and it's been. You're right, by the way. It has been a very violent coup. That I know if you saw that video of that mayor who
Yes.
was taken by the coup mob,
They shaved her head.
cut her hair, pour red all over her, burned the municipal center, made her walk through the street barefoot. I mean, it was just gross. It was like a Game of Thrones
Game of Thrones,
scene.
yeah, I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
It was just like Game of Thrones. It's crazy. And then Evo's sister's house was set on fire.
Exactly.
So it was a very violent coup. And Evo was warned that there was a $50,000 reward on his head. That if he was killed, the person who did it would get a $50,000 reward. So he went to Mexico. Thanks to AMLO, the president of Mexico, saved his life. Evo says he's going to come back stronger. And I know from the history of Bolivia that the indigenous forces are very powerful. They make up 60 to 70% of the population of Bolivia. And you cannot run that country if that force is against you. They have removed previous presidents, and so I don't think this coup is over by any stretch of the imagination. And I think you're right about the issue of lithium. That's just one of the very important natural resources that Bolivia has. They also have a very plentiful gas supply. That was the old issue when the indigenous removed previous presidents. It was over the issue of selling gas to the United States corporations at low cost. That's what threw the previous administrations out before Evo then was elected and nationalized the gas industry.
Yeah.
But lithium, the U.S. and Evo had entered a contract with the Chinese government to give them 49% control over the lithium corporation. And that would have been a major benefit to China, which is moving very quickly toward electric cars and electric transport generally. Bolivia also controls the natural resources necessary for computer screens. It's a very wealthy country in natural resources. The question is, who's going to get that wealth?
Yeah.
The people of Bolivia or U.S. and other Western corporations.
Yeah.
This coup government is going to put the U.S. corporations in charge. I expect if they stay in power, we'll see IMF loans that put the country in debt to provide further control. But I don't think this is over yet. This is this coup came quickly. Evo is alive and speaking. His allies are still in Bolivia. I don't think this is over yet. We're going to see how this ends up, but the people of Bolivia are too strong to allow this to happen.
I don't think people understand in the States the severity of these coups, that if we stand behind these coups and we let these happen and we don't call them out, individuals, corporations make tons of money stealing the natural resources from these countries. Evo Morales was going to nationalize that lithium, and that money was going to go to the people. That's why I haven't eaten a banana in 2 years because of what's going on in Honduras, because it was the people who were just getting starved of those natural resources while these corporations are making money hand over fist. Now, transitioning to the people who got it right here. Bernie Sanders immediately called it a coup, which was great. He said it appears to be a coup. He didn't go in depth into it, but he said the military is taking over. It's a coup. Tulsi Gabbard took a week, studied the information, and got it right and said this is definitely a coup, period, and the U.S. doesn't need to be involved. On the other side, we have people like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, who were involved. How deeply are they involved, and what price should they pay if they, in fact, were talking to the oppositions of these bloody coups?
And they're not just involved in Bolivia. They're involved in Venezuela. And by the way, that's one that Sanders has gotten wrong. I hate to say.
Oh, we know that. We know that.
We know.
Sanders
we know that. We know that.
Very disappointing. I'm very disappointed with him on that. He knows better because in the 1980s, he was involved in the Nicaraguan and the anti-Contra, that whole effort. So he's aware of U.S. So I was very disappointed he got Venezuela wrong. In fact, he said some really stupid things.
No, we know.
We know. On the CNN town hall when he said they should have an election in Venezuela. This time have election monitors. Well, there were more than 300 election monitors in Venezuela when they had the last election. I was there.
It's one of the most democratic elections.
Exactly. So Bolivia, yes, the usual suspects of coup plotters in the U.S. Senate and House are involved, and that includes not just Republicans but Democrats as well. Sanders is unusual, and Tulsi's unusual in that they got this right. So I applaud them. I applaud them for that. And my hope is that if Sanders is able to get the nomination, which I know the Democratic Party elites are trying to prevent, but he keeps rising in the polls. He seems to have come to life after his recent heart event. He seems even stronger now. And Warren is dropping. Warren really blew it with her comments on Medicare for All, where she created a two-step process over multiple years and really showed that she's not serious about Medicare for All. If you look at her poll numbers, you'll see that they have declined drastically ever since she took that wrong position. Medicare for All is an essential position, I think, for the Democratic nominee. Of course, the Democratic elites are trying to avoid that. So I think on Bolivia, thankfully Sanders and Tulsi got it right. But the usual suspects are playing their role. In fact, with Hong Kong, you can see pictures of the Hong Kong protest movement leaders meeting with Rubio and the other coup plotters
Jimmy Lai
in the U.S. So no question. It gets more and more obvious. We're having so many more coups these days, it seems like, and I think Trump is more sloppy about it, so they're more open. It's getting more and more obvious who is on the side of regime change in the U.S., who are the interveners, and who are those who are beginning to say hands off. I was very pleased to see a number of Democrats in the House send a letter openly calling for this coup and to restore democracy in Bolivia. That's what needs to happen.
So with Venezuela, there were clear money ties to U.S. involvement in the coup. It was also very blatant at the embassy, as you experienced. But with Bolivia, it wasn't as immediate. It was more about the OAS. Do we have any actual money ties between Bolivia and the United States? I know I listened to some of the audio files that in Spanish that were talking about Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. But do we have any actual money ties besides the OAS?
Well, other than the payoffs to the generals, that's the only thing that's come out is the payoffs to the generals. Evo Morales had kicked out NED and USAID.
Okay.
He did not allow them to operate in Bolivia, so he knew that those were the coup agencies, and he kicked them out. And you were right. In Venezuela, there was much more open involvement of the money flow. And again, Trump is so open about the Venezuela coup. He talked openly about it back in 2017. He talked about military attack in Venezuela. And luckily that gave the Venezuelans enough warning to prepare for it. Now, Venezuela, unlike Bolivia, has a very deeply educated military. I mean, Hugo Chavez came out of the military. And so that military is not as easily bought off or corrupted by the U.S. and its resources. And Bolivia didn't have that. I was kind of shocked that Evo, because he kicked out NED and kicked out USA, that he didn't have his generals under control. That's kind of
Exactly.
unfortunate and shocking. Now in Venezuela, not only is the military under control, it's a strong force, it's 200,000 size military, but they've also developed a civilian militia of more than 2 million armed and trained.
Yeah.
And that ranges from teenagers to grandmothers. And so if there was ever a U.S. invasion of Venezuela, it would be a impossible task for the U.S. to take over Venezuela.
Yeah.
The people are too well educated on U.S. imperialism. They're too well aware of U.S. tactics, and they are armed and prepared for a U.S. military invasion. Can you imagine 2 million civilian militia, 200,000 troops, National Guard, and police? The population is 30 million people. 2 million of them are civilian militia. That means they're on every corner. U.S. troops will be seeing armed civilians ready to combat them. It's an impossible task to take over Venezuela.
And just real quick, I just want to comment on that because I think that was Evo Morales' mistake, was that he didn't have a successor or a series of people. And this is the thing that I look at, like people like Bernie Sanders and movements in general. You have to build successors. And in Venezuela, that exists. That existed, as you pointed out, not only in the military, but others that could take over. Chavez had Maduro and so on and so forth. And I feel like Morales needs to build upon that because that was kind of like where the line broke, so to speak.
Well, you know, I don't know Bolivia as well as I know Venezuela. I've never been to Bolivia. I've been to Venezuela twice in the last year. And one of the great one of the great experiences I had in Venezuela was going to the taping of their most popular TV show. It's a weekly show. It's 5 hours long. And it is a show that is a mixture of Saturday Night Live, music, comedy, and it's the person who runs it is one of the most powerful politicians in the country, the head of the National Constituent Assembly. And the centerpiece of the show is he has these boards up, and on each board he has index cards, 80 index cards of stories. He goes to each index card and tells the story, a political story. It was good news, bad news, and the electrical attack. Those are the three categories of story. He went through 80 stories and described them. So the population got deep political education. And this is the most popular show on TV in Venezuela. They made us. We thought we'd just go to the check it out, stay in the back and watch a little bit of it and then leave. But they put us in the front and center, and then they had each one of us stand up and wave to the crowd. And so the next day, all of the waiters and service people knew who we were. We walked around town, people knew us because it's the most popular show in Venezuela. And so that's the kind of deep political education they have. They've done that in their military. And there was a whole section of the show that were military people. And they were dancing to the music and laughing at the jokes. Guaido was they mocked Guaido. They mocked Trump. They mocked Bolton. It was an amazing show. But that's what it takes. Revolution is a process, and part of that process is really educating your public, educating your people in your government and your military. I don't know the situation in Bolivia as deeply. I know the indigenous people are well educated. I know Evo was a union leader of the Coca Union, and that's how he got his start. So that's a very well-organized group of people. But obviously he didn't have his military under control, and that was his Achilles heel.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the name of the show in Venezuela?
Hit It With a Club. Hit It With a Club. And on the front of the main speaker was a slogan that says, "We say nothing bad about Chavez here." And the other slogan was, "Always loyal, never a traitor." Those are the two slogans in front of the on the podium. So it's an amazing show, really an amazing show. And you know, Chavez had a show like that when he was in power. He had and his show now didn't have a certain number, and it was a little bit different. He was like a great professor, and he would start a story and he'd talk for hours. It would go around and around and come back to the conclusion. So he was educating the public as he was building his power. and that's continued under Maduro and under the current government.
Hey, we have a couple super chat contributions I want to peel through real quick because they you can talk a little bit on them. Thank you for the super chat contribution from Ren Stend, and it is always appreciated on the couch. The big issue: gamers in America are supporting the protest, I'm assuming in Hong Kong, because of the PR nightmare with the gaming company, but none know about the NED funding. I guess the gamers got more stakes in the game than us. I don't know.
Well, no, it's these are all complicated situations, and it really that's why Popular Resistance, we really try to get the truth out as quickly as we can. We saw that we didn't do that in Syria, and that caused a lot of divisions among the left over the U.S. role in Syria. Yeah. There was a lot of anti-Assad views, and that caused a lot of disruption in our communities. And so we've really tried now to, as quickly as we can, get the truth out when we see these kind of things happening. And if you really want to understand something, you mentioned that you can go to Popular Resistance and almost see in live time what happened. The way to do that, if you just a Google search, it just comes out in no order. But if you go to popularresistance.org/tag/Bolivia or /Ukraine, then you'll see all the stories in order. The most recent first, and you can go all the way to the beginning of the Ukraine story. Yeah. If you go popularresistance.org/tag/Ukraine, you can see the whole Ukraine story unfold as that. We put up about 15 stories a day on movements around the world and on movement issues around the world. And so if you subscribe to our daily digest, it's free. You get about 10 to 15 stories every day. It's about a short few lines of each story. If you're interested in the story, you can click on it and get the full story. But we provide a total history of Venezuela, of Bolivia, of Ukraine, Hong Kong, all these issues. We are trying to keep that history so people can be informed, because we think that education is the foundation of all movements. That's the first step.
You know, you want to hear something funny, too, because along with you guys in the gray zone, I would listen to some libertarians and right-wingers when it comes to interventionists. I would go to the Ron Paul sites and whatnot, because they always linked up to finances. And I always say this is the connection we need. This is the what's the word? Let me out here. The group.
Sure. No question. Cross those political barriers.
Yeah. The bridge.
And we can.
Yeah. The coalition.
I was Ralph Nader's spokesperson in 2004, and he's a big believer in right-left alliances. And so we worked together to form a right-left alliance called Come Home America that brought together libertarians and traditional conservatives along with anti-interventionist people on the left. And when I ran for office in 2006 as a Green for the U.S. Senate against Ben Cardin, I was not only nominated by the Green Party, I was nominated by the Populist Party, which is a Nader party, and the Libertarian Party. And the Libertarians nominated me because of my anti-war views and my anti-drug war views. Those were the issues that got them to support me. And so the first question I had from their Central Committee was, how can we nominate someone who believes in socialized medicine to be the Libertarian candidate? But they did nominate me, and so I think I'm the only person ever nominated for a statewide race by both the Libertarians and the Green Party. Yeah. That's interesting. So I agree that kind of cross-partisanship.
The coalition was the word I was looking for. My tongue gets stuck.
That coalition. Sure, coalition.
We have another super chat contribution from Ren Sten. Thank you so much. Kevin, he says the generals in Bolivia were trained in America under the FBI, according to the Gray Zone. Yes, and this is why they were so bought off quickly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. The Gray Zone is a fantastic source. They have done such incredible work. They have, there are a number of reporters there who I know almost. I think I know all of them. Some are from RT, some are from the Real News. They've gone on to work with Max at the Gray Zone, and they are doing just fantastic work. They are on top of all these regime change stories, and they, I think the reason why they're going after Max in this absurd prosecution around the Venezuelan embassy, a few days before that prosecution, he put out the story about how USAID is spending $42 million of USAID funds to fund the coup in Venezuela.
Yeah.
And a couple of days later, he's arrested.
Yeah.
So I can highly recommend the Gray Zone as an excellent source for information on that challenges the corporate media narrative. And I think you'll have a much better understanding of reality if you follow the Gray Zone, Popular Resistance, and a few other sources. They do great work.
And let's not forget that Max Blumenthal is not only just, the management of savagery. He'll go after, Barack Obama, because, people talk about, talking to Assad was the worst thing. He was the megalomaniac, but yet we were funding the serious jihadists in Syria, ISIS and whatnot. And he also goes after the Trump administration as well, and he holds them accountable. There is nobody escaping accountability when it comes to Max Blumenthal. He takes no sides, and I think that's also why they went after arrest him, is because he was critical of what President Trump is doing, the way he's amped up the bombing as well. So,
exactly right. He's criticized both parties. He's not a fan of either militarist interventionist party.